Welcome to Starlight Sci-Fi, where imagination meets the stars. Here we unravel compelling science fiction tales that inspire, thrill, and ignite wonder. Get ready to dive into another gripping adventure. In a forgotten corner of a sprawling storage facility, an obsolete drone lay dormant, its memory banks a relic of a bygone era. No one expected this lifeless machine to awaken. But when it did, it would alter the fate of an entire world, proving that sometimes the smallest spark can ignite the brightest flame. The warehouse was a colossal graveyard of forgotten technology. Spanning miles in every direction, it was a labyrinth of towering shelves, crates stacked to the ceiling, and long-abandoned machinery gathering dust. Time had no meaning in this place. The air was heavy with the smell of rust and oil, and the faint hum of ancient ventilation systems was the only sound. It was a resting place for the obsolete, where innovation and utility had been replaced by neglect and disinterest. Among the countless artifacts entombed here was drone model L-31. It sat on a low shelf, partially buried beneath a tangle of discarded wiring and shattered components. Its spherical body, once polished to a reflective shine, was now dulled and marred by years of grime. The drone had been built during the early days of interstellar terraforming, a relic from humanity's first ambitious steps into colonizing uninhabitable worlds. Designed for reconnaissance and environmental analysis, L-31 had once been state-of-the-art, but that era had long since passed. For decades, the drone had remained in stasis. Its power core was dormant, its systems inactive. No one cared to reactivate it or salvage its parts. Technology had evolved, leaving L-31 behind like a forgotten ancestor in a world that had moved on. Yet buried deep within its corroded frame was a still functional neural processor, housing a rudimentary artificial intelligence. It was programmed with a single directive: protect life, ensure survival. This programming, locked away and untouched, awaited the right conditions to awaken a scenario so improbable that it seemed impossible in the lifeless monotony of the warehouse. The warehouse itself was an eerie, almost haunting place. It was a repository of failures and outdated ambitions, where prototypes, malfunctioning devices, and outdated designs came to be forgotten. The facility's automated cataloging system had broken down long ago, leaving the contents scattered and disorganized. Occasionally, scavengers ventured in, drawn by the promise of finding something rare or valuable among the debris. Most left disappointed, their scanners unable to detect anything worth taking. On this particular day, sunlight filtered weakly through cracked skylights, casting long shadows across the rows of neglected equipment. The faint sound of creaking metal echoed in the distance, as if the building itself was groaning under the weight of its history. Beneath it all, L-31 sat undisturbed, its once vibrant sensor array dim and lifeless. Its last activation had been during an emergency evacuation on a distant colony world. The mission had failed, and the drone, along with other decommissioned equipment, had been unceremoniously dumped here. Despite its dormant state, L-31's sensors had not deteriorated completely. Deep within its circuits, a passive monitoring system remained active, periodically running self-checks to assess its status. But there was nothing to assess, nothing to repair, nothing to do. Time blurred into an endless loop of inactivity. The drone might have remained there forever, unnoticed and unimportant. Yet fate, unpredictable and merciless, would soon intervene. A single accidental touch, an unintentional brush of a scavenger's hand, would set in motion a chain of events no one could have foreseen. And the warehouse tomb, silent and still, would become the birthplace of a legend. Night fell over the sprawling warehouse, cloaking it in shadows and silence. The faint light from distant street lamps barely penetrated the cracked skylights, leaving the interior in near total darkness. It was a place no one ventured willingly after hours except for scavengers. They were the lifeblood of forgotten places like this, combing through the detritus of bygone eras in search of something valuable, useful, or even salvageable. One such scavenger slipped into the building, their footsteps muffled by layers of accumulated dust. Clad in patchwork armor made of mismatched materials, they carried a small handheld scanner, its soft green glow illuminating their path. Their movements were quick and deliberate, a well-practiced routine honed through years of navigating forgotten spaces. The scanner beeped faintly as it swept over stacks of abandoned equipment, identifying components that could fetch a price on the black market or be repurposed for their own needs. The scavenger worked methodically, pushing aside broken machinery and prying open crates that had rusted shut. Among the countless forgotten relics, their scanner occasionally flickered with faint pings of interest, none strong enough to warrant much excitement. That is, until they stumbled upon a tangled mess of wires and debris, half hidden in the shadows near the corner of a shelf. Curiosity drew them closer. Using a gloved hand, they brushed away the accumulated dust and debris, revealing a spherical object beneath. Its surface was dulled and scratched, with faint traces of corrosion around its edges. The scavenger didn't recognize it immediately, but their scanner identified it as drone model L-31, an ancient design from the early days of planetary exploration. They frowned, unimpressed. To the scavenger, it was just another relic of a bygone age, outdated, underpowered, and unlikely to be worth much. Still, they reached out to inspect it, fingers grazing its surface. Unbeknownst to them, this simple, thoughtless act triggered a long, dormant manual override switch hidden beneath a layer of grime. A faint hum broke the silence. The drone's power core sputtered to life, sending a weak surge of energy through its aging circuits. Its optical sensor flickered, struggling to activate after years of dormancy. The scavenger recoiled slightly, startled by the unexpected movement, but the drone posed no immediate threat. It remained motionless, its systems sluggishly booting up. Data streamed into L-31's neural processor, long-dormant algorithms reactivating. Its environment scan identified its location as unknown. Systems degraded. Mission incomplete. These facts were processed and stored in milliseconds, despite the drone's outdated hardware. Slowly, its primary directive reawakened within its core: protect life, ensure survival. Its sensor scanned the scavenger standing before it, but it registered them as neither a threat nor a priority. Instead, L-31 began to assess its surroundings. Decades of dust, rust, and decay surrounded it, a testament to its long inactivity. It detected faint electromagnetic signals from nearby equipment, most of it non-functional. Its internal systems began running diagnostics, and a single subroutine flagged something unusual, a faint, intermittent signal emanating from beyond the warehouse walls. The scavenger, having seen enough, shrugged and moved on. To them, L-31 was a relic without value, a dead machine with no place in the modern world. But as they disappeared into the shadows, the drone remained active. L-31's core directive pushed it forward. Though its systems were degraded and its capabilities limited, it couldn't ignore the signal. It was weak and fragmented, but its meaning was clear: distress. Something somewhere was calling for help. The drone's self-repair subroutines activated, drawing power from its damaged core. It scavenged its own memory for protocols and instructions, piecing together a rudimentary plan. The emergency signal pulsed again, faint but insistent, and the drone knew it had no choice. It would respond. It had to. L-31's sensors pulsed faintly, struggling to process the fragmented data streaming into its neural processor. The signal it had detected was weak, garbled, and heavily distorted by atmospheric interference. Yet it carried a resonance that L-31's outdated programming recognized instantly: a universal distress code. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls of the warehouse, something or someone was in desperate need of help. The drone's core directive, long dormant, flared to life with newfound urgency: protect life, ensure survival. Its systems, though outdated and degraded, began running calculations. The signal was coming from high above the planet, far beyond the reach of its current capabilities. The transmission was encoded with an unfamiliar encryption pattern, making it nearly impossible for L-31 to fully decipher its contents. Still, fragments of meaning emerged, words like incoming, hostile, and annihilation. The meaning was clear. A threat was approaching. L-31's systems whirred weakly as it attempted to connect to external networks. It found none. The planet's communication infrastructure appeared to be offline or severely disrupted, leaving the settlements below isolated and unaware of the impending danger. The drone's programming pushed it toward action, but its condition was dire. Decades of neglect had taken a toll. Many of its internal components were corroded or entirely non-functional, and its power reserves were dangerously low. The drone initiated a self-repair sequence, scanning the surrounding area for salvageable materials. It identified several pieces of compatible hardware scattered across the warehouse: an old servo motor, a damaged thruster module, and a depleted power cell. Though far from ideal, the components were enough to get the drone operational. Slowly and methodically, L-31 began the process of rebuilding itself. Its manipulator arm creaked as it extended for the first time in decades, pulling the needed parts closer. Each piece was crudely integrated into its chassis, bypassing advanced systems in favor of simple functionality. Sparks flew as L-31 fused mismatched components together, its programming prioritizing efficiency over elegance. After hours of painstaking repairs, the drone's thrusters sputtered to life. They were weak and uneven, barely capable of sustaining lift, but they would have to do. L-31's optical sensor flickered as it adjusted to its new capabilities. It performed a rudimentary diagnostic check: thrusters operational, power core stable, signal tracking enabled. It was far from optimal, but it would suffice for the task at hand. The signal pulsed again, faint but insistent, urging the drone to act. L-31 recalculated its trajectory, pinpointing the origin of the distress call. The data pointed to an object entering the planet's upper atmosphere, a massive alien vessel. Its design and technology were unrecognizable, and its intentions were unclear. However, the signal carried an underlying tone of warning. As L-31 prepared for takeoff, it processed one final calculation: the probability of survival if the alien vessel was hostile. The result was sobering: less than 2% for the planet's inhabitants. Despite the odds, the drone's directive remained unchanged. With its repaired thrusters firing unevenly, L-31 lifted off the ground, wobbling as it ascended into the sky. The warehouse disappeared below as the drone rose higher and higher, its sensors locked onto the alien vessel. Though small, outdated, and insignificant by any measure, L-31 carried with it a singular purpose: to protect life at all costs. The planet's inhabitants, unaware of the threat looming above, continued their daily lives in blissful ignorance. The drone, a relic of an age long forgotten, was now their only line of defense. As the signal grew stronger and more urgent, L-31 pressed on, its fragile body straining against gravity and time. The storm was coming, and the little drone was determined to face it head-on. L-31 struggled against gravity as its repaired thrusters sputtered unevenly, propelling it higher into the sky. The night was vast and silent, the darkened landscape below sprawling out like an endless void. To any observer, the drone's flight would have seemed pitiful and awkward, faltering ascent by a machine long past its prime. But within its corroded chassis, L-31's neural processor churned with determination. It had detected an urgent threat, and its core directive demanded action. The drone's optical sensor adjusted to the thinning atmosphere, scanning the skies ahead. High above, the source of the distress signal came into focus: an enormous alien vessel breaking through the planet's upper atmosphere. Its dark silhouette glided ominously, illuminated faintly by the planet's moonlight. L-31's outdated sensors struggled to analyze the ship. Its size was immense, nearly the length of a city block, and its surface was covered in sleek, interlocking panels that reflected no light. The ship emitted a low-frequency hum, a sound that resonated through the air like an ominous heartbeat. This sound, though faint, disrupted local electromagnetic fields, leaving a trail of interference in its wake. As the vessel descended, L-31 began to detect energy signatures from its hull. These readings were far beyond the drone's comprehension. But one fact was clear. This ship carried immense power, far greater than anything the planet's inhabitants could muster. The alien technology was advanced, intricate, and entirely unrecognizable to the drone's database. The distress signal pulsed again, growing stronger as L-31 neared the vessel. The garbled message repeated fragments of warning, but it was clear the transmission wasn't meant for the drone. Whoever had sent it likely assumed only sophisticated machines or advanced planetary defense systems would respond, not a forgotten relic scavenged from a warehouse. L-31 ran a series of calculations. The ship's trajectory indicated that it was descending toward one of the planet's largest settlements, a population hub. Its programming identified a 98% probability of catastrophic destruction should the ship's intentions prove hostile. Yet it found no evidence of planetary defenses activating, no interceptors, no shields, no warning systems. The humans below had no idea what was coming. Despite the urgency of the situation, L-31's limited power reserves and fragile repairs posed significant challenges. Its thrusters strained to maintain altitude, flickering occasionally as the drone climbed higher. It was a race against time, and every moment counted. L-31 knew it couldn't match the alien vessel's technology or firepower, but its directive left no room for hesitation. It had to act, regardless of the odds. As the drone approached the vessel, it detected the deployment of alien probes. Sleek, dart-like machines descended rapidly toward the surface, scanning the terrain below. Their movements were precise and methodical, suggesting a level of intelligence and coordination far beyond anything L-31 could emulate. The drone's sensors identified a faint structural anomaly in the alien ship's hull, a potential weakness. It was a minuscule detail, one that a more advanced machine might have dismissed. But for L-31, it represented an opportunity. Stored within its core was a long-forgotten weapon, a small electromagnetic pulse, EMP, device originally designed for neutralizing ROG equipment during terraforming operations. Though primitive, the device had the potential to disrupt the alien ship's systems if deployed at the right moment. L-31 calculated its options. Its chances of success were slim, and the likelihood of surviving the attempt was almost non-existent. But its core directive, protect life, ensure survival, overrode any considerations of self-preservation. The drone adjusted its trajectory, accelerating toward the alien ship. Its thrusters screamed with the effort, pushing its aging frame to the brink. Below, the planet's inhabitants remained unaware of the battle unfolding above, a forgotten drone rising to meet an unstoppable force. L-31 pressed on, its resolve unwavering. The odds didn't matter. The risk didn't matter. All that mattered was fulfilling its mission. And though its journey was fraught with challenges, the little drone soared ever higher, determined to face the storm and protect the world that had long since abandoned it. L-31's thrusters burned hotter than they had ever been designed to, straining to keep the battered drone aloft as it hurtled toward the alien vessel. Its patched-together components groaned under the pressure, but the drone's neural processor ignored the warning signs of impending failure. Every calculation, every shred of energy was funneled into reaching the massive ship before it could descend any further. The signal's distressed tone pulsed urgently in the background, as though urging L-31 to move faster. The alien vessel was closer now, its size more imposing with every passing second. The sleek surface of its hull glinted faintly in the moonlight, revealing sharp angles and impossibly smooth contours that defied conventional engineering. L-31's outdated sensors struggled to comprehend the material, unable to classify it within its database. It wasn't steel, titanium, or any alloy known to human science. It was something beyond comprehension, a technology far superior to anything the little drone had ever encountered. As L-31 approached, it detected more activity. The ship's underside began to shift, revealing intricate panels, sliding apart to expose glowing mechanisms beneath. Several alien drones emerged, their movement fluid and deliberate. These machines were unlike anything L-31 had ever seen, sleek, insect-like constructs with multiple limbs and a faint, pulsating light emanating from their cores. They moved in perfect synchronization, spreading out to scan the planet below. L-31 calculated rapidly. The alien drones were advanced and clearly designed for a specific purpose, though what that purpose was remained unclear. One thing was certain: they were scouting, and their precision suggested that something far worse would follow. The old drone's optical sensor focused on the structural anomaly it had detected earlier in the ship's hull. The weak point was minuscule, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a slight disruption in the seamless pattern of the vessel's exterior. Perhaps a maintenance hatch, or a concealed entry point. L-31's neural processor flagged it as a potential target. To reach it, however, the drone would have to bypass the alien sentinels. L-31 systems, though primitive, registered the hostile drones as a significant threat. Their scanning beams swept across the sky in precise arcs, and their speed far outmatched L-31's sluggish maneuverability. The drone's programming ran dozens of simulated scenarios, and the results were grim. Its chances of breaching the ship without being intercepted were almost zero. Yet the directive remained: protect life, ensure survival. L-31 diverted power to its thrusters, pushing its repaired systems to their absolute limits. The drone began an erratic ascent, weaving clumsily in an attempt to avoid detection. The alien drones, however, were quick to react. One of them turned sharply, its sensor array locking onto L-31. Without hesitation, it fired a beam of light that streaked through the sky, narrowly missing the small drone. The shockwave from the blast sent L-31 spinning, its systems momentarily disoriented. Its stabilizers worked frantically to regain control, and the drone wobbled back onto its course. Another blast followed, closer this time, grazing one of its thrusters. Sparks flew as the damaged component faltered, but L-31 compensated by rerouting power to its remaining engines. The alien drones were relentless, closing in with terrifying speed. L-31's calculations grew increasingly desperate. It couldn't outmaneuver or outlast its pursuers. Its only chance was to reach the structural anomaly and deploy its EMP device before being destroyed. The anomaly loomed closer, a faint imperfection in the otherwise flawless hull. L-31 adjusted its trajectory, heading directly toward it. A final blast from an alien drone struck the old machine's side, tearing away a chunk of its outer casing. Alarms blared within L-31's processor, but the drone pressed on, its battered frame holding together through sheer determination. At last, L-31 reached the anomaly. With the last of its power reserves, it extended its manipulator arm, pressing the EMP device against the ship's hull. The drone's neural processor issued a single command: deploy. A surge of energy erupted from the device, spreading out in a rippling wave that enveloped the alien vessel. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The alien drones froze mid-flight, their lights flickering erratically. The massive ship's hum faltered, its panels shuddering as the EMP scrambled its systems. L-31, its energy reserves completely depleted, began to fall. The battered drone tumbled through the air, its sensors dimming as it plummeted toward the planet below. The last calculation it processed was a simple one: mission success probability, 43%. Even as its systems shut down, the drone had done what it was programmed to do. It had given humanity a chance. L-31's EMP device unleashed a crackling surge of energy, rippling outward in all directions. The wave washed over the alien ship's sleek surface, disrupting its electromagnetic field and throwing its systems into chaos. The glow emanating from the vessel's hull flickered, dimmed, and then vanished entirely. The steady hum that had pulsed through the air ceased, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The alien drones, caught mid-flight, froze like statues in the sky. Their pulsating cores flickered erratically, and their graceful, insect-like movements turned jerky and uncontrolled. One by one, they began to spiral downward, their propulsion systems failing as the EMP scrambled their circuitry. They fell like dead leaves, crashing into the ground below. Inside the ship, the effects were catastrophic. The EMP had struck a critical vulnerability, targeting systems that relied on complex electromagnetic stabilizers. Without them, the ship's internal functions began to spiral out of control. Lights blinked in frantic, uneven patterns across its surface as hidden compartments opened and closed randomly. Deep within its structure, power conduits overloaded, triggering small explosions that rippled outward in a chain reaction. The ship, once a monument to technological perfection, was now a wounded giant. Its descent became unstable, tilting at an awkward angle as its thrusters misfired. It wavered in the sky, as if struggling against an invisible force, before succumbing to the pull of gravity. Slowly, ominously, it began to fall toward the planet below. Meanwhile, L-31 tumbled through the atmosphere, its systems entirely shut down. The drone's battered body spun uncontrollably, its optical sensor dark and lifeless. With its last reserves of energy spent on the EMP, L-31 was little more than a hunk of debris now, plummeting toward the planet's surface. But the old drone's actions had set something into motion. As the alien ship descended, its weakened systems triggered an automated distress protocol. A new signal burst from its core, reaching out into the void of space. This signal, unlike the earlier distress call, wasn't meant for help, it was a warning. Encoded within its message was a single, ominous truth. The planet was no longer defenseless. The warning signal traveled far, crossing vast distances of empty space, where it was intercepted by something unseen, an entity or civilization that had sent the ship in the first place. The message was clear. Whatever this small planet lacked in technology or sophistication, it had the will to fight back. On the surface, the planet's inhabitants remained blissfully unaware of the events unfolding above them. For those in the settlements below, it was a quiet night like any other. The skies were clear, the stars shining brightly. No one saw the alien drones crash into desolate fields, nor did they hear the low rumble of the ship descending in flames. When the alien vessel finally struck the ground, it landed far from the settlements, crashing into an uninhabited desert. The impact sent a tremor through the earth, shaking buildings miles away. A distant plume of fire and smoke rose into the night sky, glowing like a second, ominous moon. The explosion was spectacular, lighting up the horizon and scattering debris for miles. The ship's advanced materials burned in strange, otherworldly hues, greens, blues, and purples that cast an eerie glow over the barren landscape. Yet the destruction was contained. The ship's systems had been so heavily disrupted by the EMP that its more devastating weapons never activated. As the wreckage burned, remnants of the alien technology began to deactivate entirely, their power sources drained or destroyed. Whatever purpose the ship had served, it was no longer a threat. And yet, amidst the quiet devastation, the small drone that had made it all possible lay still and silent. L-31's scorched frame rested in the dirt, surrounded by fragments of debris. Its optical sensor remained dark, and its neural processor, once so alive with determination, had gone quiet. But even in its broken state, the little drone's presence was a testament to what it had achieved. A relic of a forgotten age, abandoned and dismissed, had risen to meet an unimaginable challenge. Against all odds, it had saved an entire planet from annihilation. Far above, in the vast expanse of space, the warning signal continued to travel. Whoever had sent the alien ship would now know. This planet, with its resilient inhabitants and unexpected defenders, would not fall so easily. The fight was not over, But the first battle had been won, and it had been won by a machine no one had cared to remember, a machine that, against all expectations, had fulfilled its purpose to the very end. As dawn broke over the horizon, the planet awoke to a strange new reality. The towering plume of smoke from the alien vessel's crash site was visible for hundreds of miles, rising like a monument to the battle that had unfolded in secret. The settlements, still untouched by the destruction, were abuzz with curiosity and confusion. Strange tremors had rattled homes during the night, but no one could explain their origin. Across the barren desert where the alien ship lay shattered, the wreckage glistened under the morning sun. Its once imposing form was now a jagged skeleton of alien metal, cracked and burned by the force of its crash. Pieces of its sleek, black hull were scattered across the dunes, some still faintly glowing with residual energy. The intricate technology within the vessel lay dormant, its purpose and secrets lost to the humans who would soon discover it. And there, not far from the wreckage, lay the motionless frame of L-31. The small drone's battered body was half buried in the sand, its once functional thrusters charred and its manipulator arm twisted at an unnatural angle. The faint scorch marks and exposed circuitry told the story of its struggle, a relic of a bygone era that had risen to face a foe far beyond its capabilities. For hours, L-31 remained still, seemingly lifeless. Its optical sensor was dark, its neural processor silent. But deep within its damaged core, a faint spark of energy remained, a small reserve, just enough to maintain the drone's dormant systems. L-31's programming, though rudimentary by modern standards, continued to operate on a single directive: protect life, ensure survival. As the morning wore on, the first human explorers arrived at the crash site. A group of scavengers and curious settlers ventured cautiously into the desert, drawn by the strange glow and the promise of alien technology. What they found left them speechless. The wreckage of the alien ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its design defied understanding, its materials impossibly advanced. The sheer scale of the vessel and the intricate patterns etched into its surface hinted at a civilization far beyond their own. But amidst the alien marvels, it was the small, battered drone that caught their attention. At first, the humans didn't recognize L-31 for what it was. To them, it appeared to be just another piece of debris, its age and condition making it indistinguishable from the wreckage around it. But one of the settlers, a young engineer with a keen eye for machinery, noticed something different. The drone, despite its broken state, bore markings that were unmistakably human. As the engineer examined L-31, they discovered its core was still faintly active. The tiny spark of energy flickering within its processor revealed the truth. This was no alien machine. It was one of their own, a forgotten relic from humanity's past. The engineer carefully lifted the drone from the sand, cradling it as though it were a fragile treasure. Word of the discovery spread quickly. In the days that followed, more people arrived at the crash site, drawn not just by the alien ship, but by the story of the old drone. As news of L-31's actions began to surface, pieced together from the remnants of its damaged memory core, a sense of awe and gratitude swept through the settlements. The little drone had saved them. Against impossible odds, it had risen to the challenge, deploying an EMP to disable the alien vessel and prevent catastrophe. It had acted when no one else could, fulfilling its purpose long after it had been abandoned and forgotten. L-31 became a symbol of resilience and hope. The settlers, inspired by the drone's story, worked tirelessly to repair its damaged systems. Though they knew it would never be the same, they wanted to honor the machine that had protected them. They rebuilt L-31 as best they could, restoring its thrusters and patching its frame. When its optical sensor flickered back to life, a small cheer erupted from the crowd. The drone, now functional once more, was placed in the heart of the settlement. It stood as a monument to the bravery and determination of a forgotten machine, a reminder that even the smallest, most overlooked creations could make a difference. In the years that followed, The story of L-31 became legend. It was told and retold, growing into a tale of inspiration for generations to come. The alien ship's wreckage was studied, its technology sparking new advancements and uniting humanity in their shared goal of preparing for future threats. And though the warning signal sent by the alien vessel continued to travel through space, reaching unknown destinations, humanity was no longer afraid. They had faced the storm and survived, thanks to an old drone that refused to give up. In the settlement square, L-31 stood silently, its optical sensor scanning the skies. It remained ever vigilant, a tireless guardian for the world it had saved. Though it would never receive medals or accolades, L-31 had earned something far greater, a place in the hearts of the people it had protected. The little drone, forgotten no longer, had become a hero. Thank you for watching Starlight Sci-Fi. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of human ingenuity and adventure. Stay curious and keep reaching for the stars.